There's a lot of people that say that time is the great equalizer. While we each have our own unique talents and situations, we all share the same 24 hours in a day. The MCAT is similar in that sentiment. Even though each student is going to come in with a unique educational background and content mastery, you are all given the same amount of time to complete the exam. My name's John. I'm a first-year medical student, a 90th percentile MCAT scorer, and a professional tutor for years. But today, I'm here to teach you how to make timing a strength on the exam. Timing's a struggle for almost every single student on the MCAT. You have some students that just blaze through the exam, but for the most part, most students struggle to finish at least 2 out of the 4 sections in the allotted amount of time. During the exam, feeling rushed can cause a lot of unwanted stress, and this can lead to huge test day drops on your exam score. You end up creating unwarranted anxiety and wasting more time by thinking, crap, I'm behind, like how am I going to catch up? And this is the very type of self-destructive thought process that you probably had the first time you took your first practice exam or maybe even your first real MCAT. The best way to avoid that is by making a timing chart. This is going to be accomplished through a series of steps that I'm going to get to a little bit later in the video. Check the timestamps in the description if you want to skip straight to those. But first, let's understand the timing of the exam itself. The exam is going to be split into 4 sections. 3 of those 4 sections are going to be science passages: the CP, the BB, and the Psych-Soc. On the science passages, you're going to have 59 total questions, 10 passages per section, and 95 minutes to complete that section. Most questions will have an associated passage, but some questions will not. We're going to call those standalone questions. For each science passage, it's safe to give yourself 8 minutes total to read the passage and answer every single question. Because most science passages are either 4 or 5 minutes, the breakdown looks like you giving about 3.5 minutes to read the passage and organize your thoughts, and about 1 minute to answer every single question. For the cars section, you're going to have 53 questions, only 9 passages, but only 90 minutes to complete them. This is usually the section that gives students the most trouble with timing. Cars passages have either 5, 6, or 7 questions per passage. This gives you 3.5 minutes to read the passage, about 30 seconds to gather your thoughts and write your main idea, and 1 minute to answer each question. If you don't know what I mean by main idea, check out our strategy videos above. So, knowing that we're essentially giving ourselves 4 minutes to read the passage and organize thoughts, and 1 minute per question to answer, we're going to give ourselves 11 minutes to complete a passage that has 7 questions, 10 minutes to complete a passage that has 6 questions, and 9 minutes to complete a passage that has 5 questions. To calculate how many questions are in a passage, subtract the question number that you will end on from the question number that you begin on, and then add 1. So, if this passage spans questions 13 to 19, I'll say 19 minus 13 is equal to 6, and then I'll add 1, and that gives me 7 total questions for this passage. Adding 1 allows you to include the question that you're currently on as part of that passage. For some people, this is going to be overly complicated, and they can just look at it and see how many questions are in that passage. But for others, you'll need to use that simple little math. Do whatever works for you. The way that we're going to keep up with that is by using a timing chart. That's the focus of today's video. A timing chart is an actual paper record of when you started that passage and when you should expect to finish it. We're going to create it in 3 steps. The first is identify how much time you have left for the entire section. You can find this simply by looking in the top right corner of your screen when taking the MCAT. Go ahead and write that number down. The second step, figure out exactly how much time you should be spending on each passage following the rules that we laid out previously in the video. Subtract that from the amount of time you have left. That's how much time you should have remaining on the clock when you finish that passage. So for example, if I begin passage 1 of CP with 1 hour and 35 minutes left on the clock, this passage should take me 8 minutes. That means I should finish with 1 hour and 27 minutes left on the clock. So I'll go ahead and cross out 1 hour and 35 minutes and write down my expected time, 1 hour and 27 minutes, before I even begin reading the passage. Because the cars is a little bit more complicated, we'll say I begin passage 3 of cars with 1 hour and 10 minutes left on the clock, and the passage has 7 questions total. That means I should subtract 11 minutes from my total time remaining and I should finish this passage when the clock strikes 0:59. This may be a little bit difficult at first. I'm adding more math to a test that you already don't want to take, but give this some practice and it'll become second nature. Now you basically have your time chart completed. The third step is really more of a tip, and that is, if you spent over 1 minute on a question, give it your best educated guess, flag it, and move on. This actually is going to take you more practice than you think. It's not going to feel very natural to flag a question and move on, and sometimes you're going to think, oh my gosh, I've accidentally spent 2.5 minutes on this question. It's okay. Eventually you will develop an internal clock for about how long it feels to spend 1 minute on a question, and that's just going to come with practice. For now, just focus on watching the clock kind of loosely and try to develop that internal clock. If you're struggling to move on from questions that you feel like you could get right if you just gave it another minute or two, I want to give you some calm. While it's my hope and my desire that you get every single question correct on the MCAT, you've got to keep in mind the fact that missing one additional question or getting one additional question right is probably not going to change your score at all on the exam. But what will impact your score is if you get behind on your timing and you end up having to guess on the last passage or two or maybe even three. Therefore, if you spent over a minute on a question and you're not very close, like within 15 seconds to getting a question correct, just give it your best guess and move on. Making timing your strength is difficult, and it requires a lot of practice, but one thing that you can do while you're not studying to help with timing is reading real books. Most timing struggles come from having to reread paragraphs or even rereading entire passages because you didn't understand it at first. A great way to help with this reading comprehension is by reading 20 or 30 minutes a day. So instead of scrolling on social media before you go to bed or first thing when you wake up in the morning, pick up a book instead. It sounds silly, but I've seen it help tons of students like yourself before. And it may not give you that dopamine hit that getting 400 likes on your most recent thirst trap gives you, but it's going to help you on your MCAT. And likely, it's going to unearth a habit that we all know we should be doing a little bit more of. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so that you can see more strategies that we use with our students. And if you're interested in how those strategies are actually carried out on a real exam, give our passage breakdown playlist a watch. We're going through the entire AAMC sample test right now. It's a good one. I'll see you next time.